Coalition. We are one of several organizations working on this important project, the Birthplace of Rivers National Monument Project. It's an entirely citizen-driven initiative, and it just represents a really great opportunity to celebrate who we are as the Appalachian people, have a fitting tribute to us, our interaction with the landscape throughout history, our musical heritage, and just how unique the landscape is anyway. I think all of us are very proud of this place, no matter where you come from in West Virginia. These are a lot of the places that you identify with and that you're proud of. And when we go away and we come back, it's these iconic features that we all sort of relate to. And I think we all sort of have a special place in our hearts for those special features, and we want to see them remain just as special as they are forever. So that's kind of just what this project is all about. A national monument would be a special designation for a part of the Monongahela National Forest, entirely national forest land, no private land, to preserve and promote a unique landscape and the rich cultural heritage on a more national level. And that's for future generations of West Virginians, as well as for the American people in general as a whole. When you go up to the Highland Scenic Highway on a weekend, you see people from all over the country there, and people from all over the country and all over the world come here to enjoy these places. And it's not just us as West Virginians who are very proud of it, but it really is the American people who have a lot to benefit from this. It's a chance to tell our story in a very positive light. I think all of us are very frustrated when we look on TV and we see these shows about West Virginia and how we're all sort of portrayed in a very negative light. But this is a way to really show off what's great about West Virginia, what's great about Appalachia. It is all about telling that story. Our interaction with the landscape, our culture, the history, and it's really an opportunity for sustainable economic benefits as well. And I think today you'll hear from some business owners who share that with me and share that vision of a sustainable economic future for Pocahontas County and really West Virginia as a whole. So what we're talking about is an extremely unique, contiguous landscape that surrounds what is now the Cranberry Wilderness. It's already designated wilderness. We're talking about some special features that are located up adjacent to the wilderness. It's an opportunity to preserve and promote the traditions of hunting and fishing. Those are such important parts of what the National Forest represents, both for our culture and our heritage, as well as our tourism industry, to have hunting and fishing and have these places where people can do those activities and where that access is preserved and protected, as well as the resource that makes the places so special to hunt and fish in. Again, that heritage. So I think all of us are very proud of the music that comes from here and other cultural items like the Last Forest that Mr. Sacker just pointed to, the mural that celebrates the Last Forest and the works of Louise McNeill right in Marlington. It's the first thing you see, and that's all about this landscape and how inspiring this landscape has been to local people, local musicians, and local authors over the years. And I think we want to be able to pass on that inspiration to future generations. These are some of the specific features here: Cranberry Wilderness, Cranberry Glades, the Falls of Hills Creek, Cranberry Backcountry, Key Creek Backcountry, Turkey Mountain, the Highland Scenic Highway. Again, some of the more iconic features in all of West Virginia. These are the places that people know of and that we're so proud of. And these are the places that really define, that wild part in wild and wonderful West Virginia. Some of the cultural and historical things, I've talked about some of these already, the Last Forest and the Hammonds family, and some archaeological sites. The site of the Mill Point Federal Prison, that's a really interesting piece of our nation's history, to have a prison for moonshiners and conscientious objectors. And not many people know it's there, but that's what national monuments are all about, is to identify those places that have some kind of historical or natural significance, and be able to identify those and be able to tell the story so that people can find out about it and people can celebrate it, and so that we can embrace that here on the community level. And this is called the Birthplace of Rivers National Monument. It's a celebration of Pocahontas County and what Pocahontas County is all about. Not all of the rivers that start in Pocahontas County begin here in this proposed area, but there are headwaters or tributaries of the Cranberry, the Cherry, the Gauley, the Elk, the Williams, and the Greenbrier. So it's a really fitting tribute, to this community, to this county, and to this special resource that we're lucky enough to be blessed with clean water. On a map, I'll caveat that nothing is set in stone. All of this, as far as management details, as far as the final boundaries and what this ends up looking like, it's all this collaborative, fluid process, and it's all up for discussion. And there are conversations that have been going on for months, and there are conversations that are going to continue for months about, you know, where we need to make adjustments to the boundaries, or what kind of management recommendations need to be put out there so that this really works for everybody. That's what's so special about this project. I've worked on campaigns with my organization before for designation of wilderness areas, and wilderness is so concretely defined by the Wilderness Act, so it's very black and white, and there's not much wiggle room for negotiation of, you know, what those management details might look like. But this really special thing about this National Monument Project is that all of us who had these battles over wilderness before have been able to rally on some of these issues with the National Monument. So we're having groups that we have disagreed with before, like Child Unlimited, or like the mountain biking community, because you can't mountain bike in wilderness, and you have a harder time accessing trout streams for restoration in wilderness. But with the National Monument, where that access is protected, it's really been a special process to find that common ground on which we all stand. And you know, we all love the forest, and sometimes we disagree on how best to protect it or how best to manage it. But this has been a really special thing for me, and I think a lot of for the other people involved, to really take part in this very collaborative, very fluid process where there is room for negotiation. We've never had a national monument before in West Virginia. This would be the first one ever. So there's some confusion, I think, about what a national monument would be and what a national monument wouldn't be. National monuments that exist all across the country are managed in very different ways, and they can be a house like the George Washington birthplace, and that's a national monument where you just go and you kind of take a tour of this house. And they can also be these 3 million acre landscapes in the West, in the southwestern desert. So the management of national monuments is very different, but for this national monument, I think we need to take some time sort of clarifying some of the points where there has been some confusion. So the monument, a very important point to consider is the monument would continue to be managed by the U.S. Forest Service. The monument would not be managed by the National Park Service or any other federal agency, and I think there was some confusion about that when there was a separate, unrelated proposal for a national park in the northern part of the Monongahela National Forest several months ago. So wanted to clarify that this would continue to be managed by the National Forest or the U.S. Forest Service. Wildlife management is another one of those issues where we had some disagreements before on wilderness areas, but we would like to see this happen in a way that promotes the maintenance and the development of wildlife openings that maybe you couldn't do in wilderness areas, but with hunting being such a big part of that, and the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources being potentially such an important partner in what the management ends up being and how it's managed, we're certainly open to being that inclusive. So the designation is not something that would preclude activities for wildlife and fisheries management. It's a designation which will allow hunting and fishing. Maybe I should have put that slide first, since I already talked about wildlife management, but hunting and fishing, that's our heritage as West Virginians. Those are the activities that we all grew up doing in this area, and that's certainly my case. I grew up in the Charleston area and came to this very place, the Cranberry Backcountry, several times a year to go fishing, and that's, for me personally, I have a lot of pride in that, and absolutely want to see that as well as hunting continue. And so we need to clarify that this is not a designation which would eliminate access for hunting and fishing, and I think the access is very, very important, and there's a lot of access there, and we want to ensure that the access that's there today remains into the future. Again, the monument is proposed for lands entirely within the National Forest System. No private land is within that boundary that you just saw on the map. And so this does not in any way represent a transfer of private lands into federal ownership. And it's a designation for lands that really makes sense for a national monument. These are lands that are already managed in a way that the intent of the management prescription is pretty compatible with what a national monument would be. These are lands that, the Cranberry Wilderness is already protected as wilderness. The Tea Creek and Turkey Mountain backcountry areas are already managed as backcountry areas, and that wouldn't really change very much. The other areas that are managed for red spruce or hardwood restoration, that's something that we would like to see continue under national monument designation. And if after restoration can continue, we're talking about a lot more than just tourism jobs here. We're talking about some in the woods jobs to get these places back to the forest that they once used to be. And again, this is kind of related to the private land. This is not a designation that interferes with the land where Pocahontas County gets nearly all of its logs. The most recent Forest Service data has Pocahontas County getting less than 3% of its logs from the National Forest. And even when you look at the broader landscape of National Forest land in Pocahontas County, this particular landscape that we're talking about is not a landscape that provides a lot of logging opportunity as it is today. This is not something that is a top-down directive from the federal government. This isn't the government saying, this is what you need to do. This is us as a group of citizens, as a grassroots coalition, really asking the government to do this for us because we want this opportunity. We want to be able to preserve these places, and so it is the result of a grassroots citizen initiative and a collaborative process. And those two things, I think, as we move forward and understand that this is very fluid and that is something that will have a lot of input from a lot of different people. It's a citizen process and a collaborative process, and it's kind of at this point it's a concept. The details are still being hashed out. The boundaries are still being discussed. So it's a process that we want to see move forward. We want to be able to build community support, and already we're seeing strong support from across West Virginia. We're seeing diverse support. We're seeing strong support. This is a couple of weeks ago, Trout Unlimited took this up, and as I said, we've had some decent disagreements with them in the past over access to trout streams. But for them, this is a very important project. This represents one of the last best places for trout in the state, especially native brook trout. So this is directly from a support document that they unanimously passed. It says the area in question is one of West Virginia's greatest assets for trout. Monument designation would provide immediate protection for this important symbol of our sporting heritage. And that's something that's very true, and something that, as I said earlier, the sporting heritage that hunting and fishing is so important to keeping this a place that all of us can continue to be proud of and we all have access to. The additional support, the mountain bikers, another group that we've had disagreements with, as far as organizations that have supported this so far, religious organizations that see a lot of spiritual value in these places being preserved. Christians for the Mountains, and the West Virginia Council of Churches, one of the largest religious organizations in the state. And then across the state there are business owners who want those sustainable economic benefits, and they understand that when you put a place out there on the national map, it does bring sustainable economic benefits to this county, to adjacent counties, to West Virginia as a whole. And it's about the branding, about the name recognition. And I always sort of talk about that landscape up there as being, a really special landscape that has special features today, like the Falls of Hills Creek and like the Cranberry Glades and the Cranberry Wilderness. And all of them on their own are incredibly impressive, and people will seek them out. But it's kind of neat to think about what happens when we really put them together kind of as a basket of goodies, and we give it a name that it doesn't have right now. We tie it all together, and we're able to market that. For the first time ever, West Virginia, Appalachia is able to market a national monument, to say to the rest of this country that what we have here in this county, what we have here in this region of West Virginia is special enough that it has this designation that we haven't ever had before. So if you're in Pittsburgh or you're DC or Philadelphia and you're looking for a place to go in West Virginia, and for the first time you see that there's this national monument in West Virginia that has this incredibly diverse offering of recreation, everything from special backcountry to the boardwalk of Cranberry Glades and the Highland Scenic Highway. There's really something there for everybody. And if you do it right, it can be a great thing, and it's been a great thing in other national monument communities. And there's been some really encouraging research that we've discovered that looks at job creation in other national monument communities. And these are numbers that are from a group called Headwaters Economics. It's a nonpartisan economic research firm based in Montana, and they actually analyze rural communities that are affected by public lands. They specifically looked at national monument communities, and they looked at job creation in national monument communities. And I think this is very encouraging. And as today's dialogue about the economy and jobs, within that kind of framework of the discussion, I think it's very important for us to look at other communities that have been positively affected by national monuments. So this is a national monument called Scotts Bluff. The private jobs from direct spending from visitors, 65 private jobs. The agency management jobs related to this national monument, 21 jobs and about $4.4 million into the local economy. But what happens when you sort of increase the recreation potential of those places? And this is a monument that has a little bit more diversification and recreation, and it's called Devil's Tower. It's in Wyoming. This supports 229 private jobs for the local community, 31 jobs from the agency, and we're looking at $15.5 million each year to the local economy. Oregon pipe cactus. This is in New Mexico, I believe, and this is 156 private jobs, $11 million to the economy. Muir Woods. This is a forest monument in California, and that supports 643 private jobs. Now this is really close to San Francisco, so the numbers of visitors to Muir Woods, might be different. But the point is, in each case, there are really encouraging numbers about what job creation looks like when we have something like a national monument that is sustainable, and that we use it, in a way that we can bring people and their dollars to this economy. Because that's really what keeps Pocahontas County going. I mean, tourism is the biggest industry now, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a balance with other industries. And as I've said before, there are other places where logging happens and where other activities happen, and so this being a national monument doesn't preclude those other activities, and it really strikes that balance that we need to be able to have a thriving tourism economy as well as a thriving economy in other sectors. And when we're talking about the Birthplace of Rivers National Monument, all we can really do is project, but I think there are some things that are very encouraging for us to consider, particularly what I've put on this list. One is our proximity to population centers. We're within a day's drive of about 40% of this country's population, very close to a lot of major metropolitan areas. In Pocahontas County, in this region, we have a diversification of attractions, so that really makes it stronger. You have to kind of think of it like a toolbox, and this is just another tool in the box. So in Pocahontas County, we're thinking about all the tools that we have, and we have Cass, and we have Watauga State Park, and we have Snowshoe. We have all of these things that just really work together in this really harmonious way. The heritage tie-in here is stronger than with potentially any other Wildlands National Monument. The infrastructure that we already have with a resort like Snowshoe nearby, to have logging infrastructure, and to have a town like Marlington so close by where there are restaurants and there are opportunities for those kinds of businesses to really increase their business. And all of these monuments that I just showed, as encouraging as those job numbers were, these are all national park monuments, which means that hunting is not part of their package. So if we add hunting to the mix here and think about how important hunting really is to our tourism economy, those numbers for us can look very healthy. And the healthy tourism revenue is not just about tourism-related businesses. The tourism revenue in this county means so much to each and every person who lives here. It relieves the landowners of taxes. Each landowner in Pocahontas County is relieved of approximately $1,000 each year because of tourism revenue. And that tourism revenue that they would otherwise be paying taxes for, it funds important services like ambulances and libraries and fire departments, as well as the Pocahontas Memorial Hospital. So it's very important to keep in mind just what that tourism revenue means for the community, and that it's not just going to a couple of tourism-related businesses. But I think as we do move forward and we try to, broaden the scope of the groups that are involved and supportive of this process, and the kind of local leaders that we need to be involved, and the kind of local leadership that we need to be involved, not just from elected officials, but from, you know, everyone who's got a stake and everyone who's got an interest in this. You know, it's kind of like, what is our vision of how we use this forest? You know, we're blessed with this resource. It's already there. We don't have to buy it from anybody. It's there. It's just kind of up to us to sort of figure out how we harness that in a way that makes the most impact. So, you know, the opportunity that I see there is for us to really be leaders in West Virginia, in the Monongahela National Forest region, and on the entire East Coast. And one of the things that I always like to think about, since there hasn't been a national monument in West Virginia or in Appalachia yet, is what if you kind of projected it out there and gave it up, and there was this contest, if you will, of a bunch of communities that would qualify for a national monument. You know, considering the economic benefits, how many communities would say, we want to be the ones that have the first ever national monument in Appalachia? You know, we want to be the ones who are leading on sustainable economic development. You know, how many communities would say that? I think a lot of them would say that. And I certainly hope that this community would say that too. You know, in these financial times, I think it's interesting to think about just the kind of impact that, even if this brought 10 new people through Hillsborough a week, you know, this is, I put Blair and Pretty Penny because it's a great example of just how many businesses could benefit from having more people here because of this opportunity. You know, Blair will buy more food from local farmers. More artisans will have an opportunity to sell their goods at Blair's restaurant. The people who make jams and teas and maple syrup and all of the other value-added products that Blair is able to sell there. There are a dozen businesses who benefit just in this one building from increased visitation from this project. You know, so is that the vision that we want? You know, is to be able to create those opportunities for local businesses. You know, the first Appalachian monument, you know, really having a monument, you know, to us and to our culture and our heritage. You know, is this our vision? Is that something that we want? Is that, you know, something that we're proud enough of to say to the rest of the country that we believe that our culture and our heritage is this special? And to be able to preserve this unique landscape. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this is just the epitome of a qualifying landscape for National Monument designation. You know, from everything from the Cranberry Glades and being as special and unique as it is, to Honeycomb Rocks, and to the backcountry areas that people really seek out. You know, they seek out that backcountry destination. You know, that's so important to the future. And is that our vision? I mean, it's certainly my vision, and I think that you're going to hear from some people today who share that vision, and some people today who have a vision for sustainable economic development in the county and have a vision for what we want to pass on to future generations. You know, I certainly want to be able to pass on that experience of coming to the Cranberry Backcountry and experiencing the great outdoors and being able to, you know, catch trout and actually be able to go to one of the only places in West Virginia where you can eat a fish that comes from the stream. You know, the monument, it's about our heritage. And it's so much about our future. So, you know, we are writing the next page in the history books, and we have to think about what the story is that we're writing right now, and what we're passing on. So, I certainly hope that this is something that this commission will see the same value in, that groups all across West Virginia, some concerned citizens here in Pocahontas County have seen value in, and as this process continues, you know, we want the county's input. We would like to be able to come back and update the county commission on the progress, and, you know, and we would like for the county commission to acknowledge the benefits and to pass a resolution just acknowledging the fact that it is a very fluid, ongoing process. But there are conversations that need to continue, but there are also benefits, and this would be a great thing for the county. And that's my vision, and I think there are a lot of people here who share that, and I certainly hope that the commission will share that as well. So that's my presentation.
Will there be timbering?
There can be, what we're looking at, oh sure. is vegetation treatment to reach some of the goals that are there in the prescriptions as they exist right now. So for instance, with the spruce restoration prescription, there have to be some trees that are cut to reach some of those goals for restoration. That certainly happened on other national monuments, and we think that's something that can happen here.
Will there be logging?
Well, I think that you look at it as the timber harvest that needs to take place for those projects. So I think that commercial timber sales, programmed commercial timber sales, are not necessarily compatible with this, but they're compatible with the way that the way that the lands are managed now. Or that, I shouldn't say that, I think that came off as the commercial timber sales being compatible, but the monument prescription would be compatible with generally how the way the lands are managed now.
Timbering is a big cultural heritage for us. We have CAS, and we'd like to see that maintained.
Yeah, and again, as far as this being a situation kind of striking that balance, there are so many other lands, even national forest lands in the county, where timber harvest is even emphasized. And it's not the goal. If the goal of this project was to stop timbering in the county, those boundaries would look a lot different. And we would reach out and try to get all of those lands where timbering is emphasized. And it's really just not here. So I think that this is not a statement in any way against logging or that logging heritage. It's just kind of a way that we look at the forest and look at how many different resources it provides us, and to make the best use of this as a resource where people want to come and visit and want to see it just the way it is, does not mean in any way that we can't make the best use of those lands that are emphasized for timbering.
Is there anyone else, anyone here to speak to this project in support of or in opposition to, or any thoughts?